serta pelbagai info dan acara hiburan terkini. Hadiah-hadiah menarik dan eksklusif setiap minggu, segalanya ada di sini. Ria Central, setiap Khamis, eksklusif di Astro Ria.
Selasa ini, dinamiknya kehidupan manusia penuh dengan aktiviti dan pelbagai kisah menarik. Warnai hidup anda bersama Living setiap hari Selasa jam 12.30 tengah hari, eksklusif di Astro Awani, gerbang dunia kita.
You still watching Analisis Pilihan Raya live from Studio Awani in Bukit Kewangan, KL, and today we're focusing on sophisticated voters. Because in America, it makes a big difference for the presidential race, but in Malaysia, we're discussing that right now. And some believe that, especially in the urban areas, where voters has a more sophistication in terms of choices, they'll say that, okay, well, I don't want to disturb the status quo of development. I'll vote for the state seats to go to the current ruling regime or party and coalition, but I'll give the parliament seats to the opposition because I want dissenting voice in parliament, for example, in Dewan Rakyat. Do you think it still is along that line? Because if everybody were to think that, then surely the opposition would win the most seat in Dewan Rakyat.
I think, unfortunately, we don't have that level of sophistry yet amongst the voters. I mean, we don't have a situation where we can actually come together in a town hall centre and the voters decide, okay, we're all going to vote for opposition in parliament, but the government in state. Having said that, there are some cases, and I think Penang is a good example. If you ask me the actual process itself, we don't have an organised way, maybe through coffee shop talk, and perhaps the internet is one technological tool that we need to look at because technology is bringing the urban voters together. And there are lots of strategies that are coming up online. Whether or not these strategies are converging together, whether or not people are agreeing, that is still yet to be seen.
Historically, Penang has the advantage of getting the influx of democracy and all this principle of governance earlier due to colonization and, you know, the Straits settlement and stuff like that. Do you think that because of this, that's why we see the opposition trying to leverage by bringing in new faces that's tied to maybe ICT and blogging, for example? You have the name Jeff Ooi, he's being touted to run in one of the seats on the island. But at the same time, you also have words that Lim Guan Eng and Lim Kek Siang are father and son. Both are going to go there, also contesting in Penang. So, but I think it's not as easy as that, because if you have contradictory like that, you say you're going for change, and then you still have the big old stalwarts, 70 years old, still going for party seats. Same time, you have new blood, but he's what 50, 51?
About 50.
And BN can capitalize on that, because it's almost like you're saying one thing and you're doing another thing also. You're not totally going for change. And then stability will offset that. What do you think? Do you think that that's going to be the predicament in Penang?
Well, I think when the DAP or opposition in general talk about change, they're not necessarily talking about fresh blood. They're talking about a change in policy, talking about a change in management, governance. And so yeah, that's what they mean by change. About whether Penang voters are different from the rest of the country, I think it is true that they've had a much healthier level of debate and open dialogue. NGOs, civil society organizations, not just on things like human rights, but really down to the grassroots things like environment. So the voters there may be a little bit more receptive to this change that the DAP is talking about. And if the DAP is focusing on a particular state to win back, then that is quite an ideal state.
Trade is a very important issue in Penang because of history, because of culture, and also because Penang supplies a lot of the microchips that, you know, drive like nearly 50% of the economy of the country. So do you think that campaigning and also promises and policies must center around trade, for example, and economic prosperity for Penang especially?
Yes, definitely. Many of the seats are quite Chinese dominated, and of course, again, talking about voting along ethnic lines. Penang has been traditionally the center for microchip development, and I think what the opposition might do this time is to perhaps show indicators that that the trade levels are not doing too well. Some of the factories or companies which are pulling out from Penang. I don't have the official statistics on that, but I think it does show a worrying trend which the Penangites will latch onto immediately.
But then again, in the Malaysian system, the beauty of it is you also have to look at the national figures and national well-being. But even for Penang, there's Seberang Perai and there's the island. So how do you reconcile your political strategy if you only concentrate on the sentiments on Penang Island, the seats that your party or your coalition in Seberang Perai is going to have a different dynamic. So how would they approach it? Because if they were to shout that in the island, they cannot be shouting the same thing on the mainland. So how would they balance that?
They would also draw on national figures, I suppose, national economic statistics. They would look at national foreign direct investment, the fact that it's been doing well, but it has also statistically dropped. Perhaps in numbers it's grown. So they will tie in both state and national issues and converge them together. But on the issue of, you talked about island and land, right? If I talk about a more national perspective of urban versus rural voters, actually between 5 to 20% of any state actually comes from outstation or lives outstation. And I think that will be interesting to look at in both Kelantan and Terengganu.
Will that actually be the swing vote that we were talking about?
Maybe, because like in Kelantan, it came out in the newspapers recently that as many as 200,000 Kelantanese actually live and work outside of Kelantan, and half of that, about 100,000, live in Klang Valley in KL. So if that is true, then your urban Kelantanese living in KL will be sort of influenced by the issues here, being exposed to the information and the dialogue here. Is there a possibility that the issues in Klang Valley will migrate back to the rural areas?
Because there's a big difference between federal issues and local state issues.
True.
That one we'll discuss after this short break.
Rabu ini, mari ikuti kisah kejayaan dan pencapaian mereka di layar perak dengan pelbagai cerita daya imajinasi yang tinggi. Jangan terlepas menonton The Gold Collection setiap hari Rabu jam 12.30 tengah hari, eksklusif di Astro Awani, Gerbang Dunia Kita. Khamis ini, cabaran menyediakan pelbagai hidangan masakan yang menyelerakan memerlukan cita rasa dan kemahiran yang tinggi. Kepuasan pelanggan menjadi keutamaan. Saksikan Reality Bites setiap hari Khamis jam 12.30 tengah hari, eksklusif di Astro Awani, Gerbang Dunia Kita.
Setiap Selasa di Primawara.
Sebab dia saja yang beri contoh yang baik pada cucu-cucu saya.
Kebencian.
Dan aku yakin dia boleh jadi ibu dan isteri yang baik daripada engkau.
Fitnah.
Rosa dengan Linda bagi tahu dengan aku, Syahira ni tak bagi makan dia, pukul dia.
Dan kekeliruan.
Kau bukan mama.
Setiap Selasa 10 malam di Astro Prima.
Jumaat ini, selami nilai estetika dan kreativiti hasil rekaan seni fashion bertaraf antarabangsa. Ilham daripada pereka-pereka terkenal dunia. Saksikan Style Maestro setiap hari Jumaat jam 12.30 tengah hari, eksklusif di Astro Awani, Gerbang Dunia Kita.